Wednesday, February 22nd. We get back to myth stories, camp stuff. You can now turn in the shirts through apparently Friday, according to the announcements. And then the myth quiz I have planned for Friday. It may get pushed to Monday. I think I need to finish stories this week, so I'm going to bump it. I normally don't like to do quizzes on Mondays, but I think it'll just have to work out this week, and we'll see what happens from there. Just my reminder. Oh, if it does get banned, I will give you the name of the kid who gets it banned. So just giving you the heads up. If it's you, be wary that I will have your name posted so that people know it is you that got it taken away. So if that helps you not make poor choices, yay. Well, we're good. We have my last two kids in here working on that to help them out. From there, let's see, we got to that, and to there. Filling in. We should finish out the rest of that and get into our first big story today. See, from there we're good. Now we got through this with you guys, correct?
Yeah.
Let's see, quick reminder on things. Let's go with Iris. When the God came down to earth, how would humans know she was coming down?
Rainbow.
Rainbow would come in. The muses, how many were there?
9.
9. What were they in charge of? Not just music. Art in general. And Hera was the god of two major things.
Major and babies.
What was the first one?
Marriage.
Marriage and? Marriage and babies. Nicely done. Which brought us to the month of marriage, because that's when people would want to get married. And then, did we get to where mind comes from?
No.
Alright. So that'll be where we start with today's story, which will actually be a story.
Oh, is this where you tell your terrible story?
Yes, they're awful. So let's go to... apparently someone's calling. 1 second. So with mind, it comes from one of the Roman names of one of the Olympians. Samson. You say Prometheus? Why do you say Prometheus? He was very smart, but it does not come from Prometheus, because he was not one of the main Olympians. Drew? Why Athena?
Because her woman is
You stopped halfway through.
Minerva.
There you go. Is correct. Comes from Athena, because her Roman name was Minerva. What is she the god of? God of wisdom and one of the gods of war. She is going to be the one that is up here in brown. She is not tiny. It's just a really weird picture. She's not a midget, and that's not a giant horse. It's supposed to be the horse is up close, and she's far away, and she's pulling it backwards. It just looks weird. Better picture is the one right behind Biggie Ogle, which is right here. And that is her with a little owl in her hand and an owl on the shield. There's no horse in that one. The horse is up there. And then over here, she is right behind Mason. This is again her. And again, what is on her shoulder? An owl. Ooh. Do you guys know who that is on the shield? Medusa. Nicely done. So Athena was god of wisdom and also one of the two gods of war. And with her being god of wisdom, do you know why she has an owl and an owl? Otherwise, so going back to fables, and we talked about motifs and the fact that with that, the fact that owls represent wisdom, that's why owls were connected to her. Yeah.
My mom has a owl birthmark right here.
No kidding. Must make her very wise.
Why is Medusa on your shield?
She is the one that got into the fight with Medusa. So she is the main god in that story.
Did she kill her? No.
She what?
I guess my mom is a bird.
Kind of. It's a long story that we'll get into.
Is she the biggest bird?
Minerva. Yeah.
Name from mind come from?
Minerva.
We're going to get to that in a second too. So, this is where Athena comes in, and I get to our first real kind of story. This one is going to deal with a young man by the name of Zeus. We're going to have to jump through time a little bit because this story is going to be a little bit out of order. This is when Zeus had just become a brand new king of all the gods. Marries Hera, and they are now the new king and queen of all the gods. Zeus is excited to be the brand new king of all the gods. He decides to celebrate the being king and his new marriage by going out and getting a girlfriend, as you do. His girlfriend is this other Titan god by the name of Metis, M-E-T-I-S. And she was one of the gods of intelligence and memory and stuff like that. And he informs Metis, you have to be careful. Don't let anyone know that you and I are dating, because if my wife finds out, she's going to get angry and she's probably going to attack and torture you, so we have to keep this on the down low. Metis is fine with that. She's like, not a problem, I'm good with it. And they are friends
With benefit.
for a while. Years go by, till one day, Metis comes up to Zeus. She goes, Zeusy Poo. He goes, yes, dear. She goes, I have great news. He goes, what is it? She goes, I'm pregnant. And Zeus goes, snap. Because that is not good news for Zeus, because he's trying to keep the whole friendship a secret. If she's pregnant, there's now going to be evidence, and he can't have evidence. So he decides to make the evidence disappear. Now, the first thought might be, you can just take a sword and then go over to your girlfriend and go, surprise, stab, and thus solving the issue. But that won't solve his issue. Do you know why?
Evidence.
Because
Immortal.
gods are immortal. So you're not going to have a dead girlfriend. You're going to have an angry girlfriend with a hole in her. So that's not going to work. And the next thought would be, well, why not just kill the baby when it comes out? The issue there being,
It'll be a god.
baby's also going to be a god, which makes it immortal. And if you stab the baby, you
Wait,
don't have
can
a
I
dead
take a
baby.
guess?
You have a baby on a stick. So Zeus has to get creative. You'll just have to wait. So he decides to come up with a whole new way of solving this problem. So he goes, oh, you're pregnant? That's wonderful. We should celebrate. And she goes, I knew you'd be excited. He goes, yeah. He goes, here's what we should do. Let's have a picnic. And she goes, I love picnics. He goes, I do too. He goes, let's have a picnic tomorrow, and we're going to go into the woods for the picnic, into the back of the woods, the deep, deep, dark back part of the woods. He goes, why are we going to go deep into the dark back part of the woods? And he goes, romantic? Oh, you're so sweet. He goes, she bought it. Okay, good. And so he goes ahead and packs a little picnic basket, sandwiches, lemonades, bags of chips, 2 cookies, everything is great. Takes her out the next day with his little picnic basket, and they travel deep into the woods, way past anyone else, into the farthest back parts of it. They have their picnic, they have their sandwiches, lemonade, everything's going wonderful, till eventually they're packing up the picnic baskets, ready to head back, and he decides now's the time to put his plan into action. He says, Metis? She goes, yes, dear. He goes, why don't we play a game before we head back? She's like, oh, I love games. What game should we play? He goes, let's play a game called Who Can Turn Into the Smallest Animal? Time out. The Greeks believed that the gods, the big titans, could shapeshift. It was a natural power that every god had. They could go from giant form into any animal they wanted to, whether it be like giraffe or moose or even down to like the size of an ant. They could shapeshift back and forth. It was just a thing that they could do. Time back in. He goes, let's see who can turn into the smallest animal. She was like, okay, sounds like a great idea. He goes, I'll go first. He goes, let's see, I'll do, and turns into an elephant. She giggles. She's like, oh, you're so, they do the giggle flirty thing. Giggle flirt, giggle flirt. She's like, oh, you're so silly. She's like, oh, I got one. She turns into a hippopotamus. He goes, can't tell the difference. And so they keep going back. Flirting. And they keep going back and forth with all of their different animals to, like, he goes into a moose, she does a deer, he goes down to a dog, she does a cat, raccoon, squirrel, till eventually they start turning into bugs. And it gets to the point where he turns into a fly. And he starts buzzing around her head. Buzz, 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 buzz. And it says, I don't think you can beat me. I've gone into fly form, and there's no way you can go smaller. Go ahead and admit I've won. She thinks about it. She's pretty smart. She goes, I got it. So he turns back into his human form and goes, what? How are you going to beat me? She says, like this. And turns into a gnat. Those really tiny black insects you can't even barely see. And turns into a gnat and starts flying around him. And he sees her flying around and goes, perfect. You didn't consider this. and reaches out and grabs her out of the air between his fingers, and then whoop, and swallows her, thus trapping her forever inside of his belly. Since he can't kill her, he makes her disappear. Now, Metis is gone. Your thought may be, why can't she turn back into full size to escape? And apparently his body was so strong, it would just keep her contained. She also does not pass through his system, because the Greeks apparently did not understand how that works. So she's trapped inside of his stomach. He dusts off his hands, packs up his little picnic basket, and gets away scot-free. No one ever sees Metis again. She is gone forever and ever. Anytime someone asks him about Metis, his response was, "Squirrel!" and he would just take off running. And they're like, "Oh, that was weird, but okay." And he would just distract them. Years go by. Centuries go by. Eventually, he builds the giant kingdom up on Mount Olympus, starts having a whole bunch of new set of kids, completely forgets about this whole Metis episode because so many years have gone by. Until one day, he's walking around Mount Olympus and starts getting the worst headache he's ever felt. He can feel it just thumping in the front of his brain. Feels like someone's just punching his brain over and over again, to the point where he's stumbling around, starts knocking things off of shelves, screaming at the other gods. He's like, "My head's pounding." He's like, "It feels like something's punching me in my brainy bits." And the other guy's like, "Well, you should do something about it." He says, "Well, someone give me some, I don't know, aspirin." I go, "We have not invented aspirin yet." He takes a table and flips it over and starts screaming. One of the gods walks up to him and goes, "Hey, I heard that you're having a headache." He's like, "Oh, worst one I've ever had." They go, "Well, your son Hephaestus has created this new headache remedy, but it's experimental. If you really want to get rid of it, you should go talk to him, and I think he can help you with your headache issue." He goes, "Perfect, I'm going to go see Hephaestus." So he goes down to the giant mountain where Hephaestus lives and knocks on the door. Hephaestus comes down. He's like, "Hey, Dad, what's up?" Zeus goes, "Hey, I have the worst headache I've ever had in my life. It's thumping right here in the front that is driving me insane. One of the gods up on Mount Olympus said that you have like a headache remedy." Hephaestus says, "Yeah, but it's experimental. I don't know if you're going to agree to it." Zeus goes, "I don't care what it is. I will take it. What do you call it?" And Hephaestus turns around and brings out a gigantic axe, almost the same size as him, with a huge axe head on one side of it, and walks over to Zeus. And Zeus goes, "What's that?" He says, "This is how I fix headaches." And Zeus goes, "What do you call it?" He goes, "I call it an axe." And Zeus goes, "Ooh, how's it work?" He goes, "Well, what I have you do is come over to this chair. I need you to lean over so your head's hanging way over the front of it." Zeus goes, "Uh-huh." He goes, "I'm going to back up over here with the axe, and then I'm going to run at you as fast as I can, and then take the axe and smash it into the top of your head, wiggle it back and forth as much as I can, and then rip it out. And then I'm going to take my hand, reach inside your skull, and then grab around whatever's causing the headache and pull it out." Zeus looks at him. "Let me get this straight. You want me to lean over a chair, and you're going to take that axe, and you're going to chop me in my head, and then you're going to put your hand in my head and reach around." Zeus looks at the son and goes, "Son, you're a genius." And Hephaestus goes, "Thanks, Pop." And he goes, "Fine, like this." And he starts leaning his head over. And Hephaestus goes, "Yup, just like that." And he backs up and he goes, "Hey, this may hurt a little bit." And he goes running at his dad. Whack! Into the top of Zeus's head, wiggles it back and forth as much as he can, rips it out. Zeus stands up, giant opening in the top of his head. He's like, what do you see?" And Hephaestus rolls up his sleeves and starts reaching inside of Zeus's skull, like randomly trying to grab things, squeezing Zeus's brain. And Zeus's leg like kicks out to one side. He's like, "Not that one." And then suddenly Hephaestus starts screaming, and jumps back. Out of Zeus's head jumps this small person wearing full body armor with a sword and a shield, like a little action figure, and lands on the ground between the two of them. Zeus looks at it, shakes his head, and it closes back up. Hephaestus looks at him and goes, "Daddy, that's a brain baby!" And And he goes, oh, I gave birth to my very own brain baby. And they both look at the little brain baby, and the brain baby starts to grow up to normal size. And it's a woman dressed in battle armor with a sword and shield. And Zeus goes, brain baby, who are you? And she goes, I'm not a brain baby. My name is Athena. I am the daughter of Metis. Zeus goes, Metis? Who's Oh. And he has that moment of realization that apparently after he swallowed Metis, she gave birth inside of him. And then the baby traveled all through his system until she got stuck in his brain. When she got stuck up there, she created her very own forge, the thing that you use to make weapons. And then she started making her own weapons while she was in his brain, thus causing him to have this giant headache that went along with it. And that is how she gets born. Because she was making weapons, she becomes a god of war. Because she was born from Zeus's brain, she becomes a god of wisdom. Zeus is so excited about giving birth to his own brain baby. He's like, you are awesome. I've never given birth to a brain baby before. You get to come up and live on Mount Olympus. And she does. When Hera meets her, Hera's like, hey, who are you? She's like, I'm Athena. And Zeus goes, she's my brain baby. Hera goes, brain baby? He goes, uh-huh. Hera says, makes sense to me, and has no problems with it whatsoever. And Athena becomes the next god up there. So your mind is connected to Minerva, which is going to be your thinker, the thing that's inside of you. Slightly different than your brain, which some of you don't have.
I have one.
Good job. You may be the only one. And then we get to our last word, March, which also comes from another Olympian, Roman name, and we have mentioned this Olympian before. Why do you say Ares?
Olympia.
He is an Olympian, but there's other Olympians.
Roman.
He doesn't have a Roman name, but so do the other ones.
Because it's Mars.
What's Mars?
Aries. It just says Mars.
That's his Roman name?
Yeah.
What's he the god of?
War.
There you go. Ares, whose Roman name was Mars.
Is that why we march?
That's why we march.
Oh.
So that's what it gets connected. Ares, god of war. Those of you who are over here, you might not be able to see it as well, so let me help you out. Ares is that guy that's up there with the dog and the vulture. He is also this vulture. The one that's back over here in this left part. This is him again, with little vultures next to him on that area. He's the one that's over here, kind of straight back from Mia. That is going to be Ares there. He is vulture free.
Vulture is big.
They usually are big size.
They eat dead things.
They do, which is why they were his birds, because he liked to kill a lot of things. Ares was the other god of war. Athena was the god of strategic war when you use your brain. Ares was the god of war when you don't care and you just want to kick someone in the jimmy and drop them on the ground. Ares, unlike in the video game, was not a tough guy. Excuse me. In Greek mythology, Ares was a gigantic wussy. There are stories in Greek mythology of Ares coming down to Earth, taking a human form, and then going into battle and fighting humans in hand-to-hand combat and getting his butt kicked. And then coming back up to Earth and crying to the other gods. And you're like, are you crying? He's like, yeah. Like, what happened? Like, I got beat up. Like, what god did it to you? Like, no, it wasn't a human. Like, you got beat up by a human? He's like, they punch hard. And other gods did not like him at all because he was whiny and kind of on the wussy side, and he was a bully and did not get along with others very well at all. And we're going to have some interesting stories about
How
that.
would a whiny person be?
How is he a bully?
Yeah, how is he a bully if he's like...
A wussy?
Yeah.
Well, if you didn't know this, most bullies are wussies. Who never fights back against them. So he was all about starting the fight, and that's why he would throw dirt in your face, and then kick you in the bits, and then when you're on the ground, he'd jump on your head a bunch of times. He's like, I'm beating you up!
What
But
about
if
in
you
the
hit
Wonder
him-
Woman thing?
Like a Wonder Woman thing.
No, what about?
Oh, yeah. And that one, because that's the DC Comics character, also not like the actual Greek mythology. And there he actually comes across as big and tough. In Greek mythology, he acted big and tough, but as soon as you punched him, he would be a wussy.
And he turned into a person.
Yeah.
He was a person.
So marching was whenever you would go off to war and you would do the war walk. Literally, it was called the Walk of Mars, because when you were going off into battle, you were honoring the god of war. So the whole idea was it was called marching. Along those lines, if you're familiar with the planet Mars, what color is it?
Red.
The reason it's called Mars is when they first saw it, and they saw that it was red, they thought it was covered in blood. And they assumed that this planet covered in blood was ruled by the god of war. So that's why they called Mars Mars. There is another definition of March.
March.
Leprechaun.
What?
Wait, is that even the day?
Aries.
Not even.
The third month of the year, the one that's coming up next week. This is also connected to the god. The reason being is that during this time of year is when weather is chaotic, where you end up having a dry spell, followed by a hurricane, followed by a tornado, followed by a flood, followed by nice weather, and that's all like in the course of 2 days. So because of that,
Indiana.
the Greeks thought that this was the time of year that all the gods were fighting each other, causing the weather to be so chaotic. So they named this time of year the time of Mars, when all the gods fought each other, thus causing crazy weather. Once the weather settled down and it got nice out, before it got too hot, what time of year was that?
April.
February.
See, it was that reference to the thing we talked about yesterday to see which kids were paying attention. It's overrated. So that's why it usually went from around the time of Mars to the time of June. Now, here's where we get to our big stories.
Whoa.
If you slide down the blue sheet a little bit to this section, the story I told you about Athena, that's how I'm going to end up teaching this unit. I'm just going to tell you a story, and then you have to listen to a story to figure out what the answers are. I'm not going to walk you through and say number 1 is this, number 2 is this, number 3 is that. That wouldn't be fun and that'd be boring. Instead, I'm going to tell you a story. As I tell you the story, you're going to realize what the answers are. If you don't, well, life sucks for you. So eventually you're going to pay attention and try to figure things out as best you can. It'll mostly be in order for the 90% of it. Each class is slightly different because questions you guys will ask will make the story change a little bit. I'll hit all the information. I just may bring it up in slightly different order. But most of it should be the same.
Look at my finger.
Oh, I have 10 of them.
No, like how red it is.
I'm aware. So let's get to our first big story. Number 1, you should already know the answer to. Because what was the first thing to exist?
Zoo.
Nothing.
Chaos.
And what was its name?
Oh,
Chaos.
God.
Yeah.
Oh.
And how do we describe chaos?
Big pudding.
Pudding ball.
There's my pudding. So again, in Greek mythology, the first thing to exist was chaos. This big swirling ball of nothing, which was the only thing out there for, we don't know, they hadn't invented watches yet. But for a long time, we just had chaos. And eventually, chaos got bored and was like, I can't be put in forever. So he decided, like a giant science amoeba, to split and form the first 2 gods. Those first 2 gods that chaos split to form were Earth and Sky. Mother Earth, known as Gaia. Sky, known as Uranus. Nicely done. So we have Mother Earth and Father Sky as the first 2 beings. And it was thought that they were actually gods. You could talk to them. You could talk to Mother Earth and have a conversation with her, and she was also the planet you could jump up and down on. Uranus was actually the sky, but you could talk to him. And turns out Kyrie Irving was correct. The Earth was not a ball, it was a giant flat plate. The Greeks believed that the Earth was a flat plate, and the sky was a bowl sitting on top of it. Not a bowl, but a bowl. So you have Earth and sky, one sitting on top of the other. And Gaia and Uranus were the only beings to exist for, we again don't know, we had not invented watches yet, but for a long time. And years go by, till one day, Mother Earth starts talking to Father Sky. She goes, Hon, you know how your name is Father Sky and my name is Mother Earth? He goes, uh-huh. She goes, I don't think we can go by those names. what do you mean? We've always been Father Sky and Mother Earth. She goes, no, I don't think I can be a mother and you can't be a father if we don't have children. He says, that's a good point. She goes, thank you. He goes, what are children? She goes, I had no idea. He goes, well, then we should invent the very first ones. And so Mother Earth and Father Sky decide to invent the very first children ever. And tomorrow, we get to find out what the very first children are going to be like.
Dang it.